Almost 3 years after Madison Mogen, Kaylee Gonzalez, Ethan Chapin, and Xana Kernodle, four University of Idaho students, were found brutally murdered in an off-campus residence on King Road, their killer was ultimately sentenced. 30-year-old Bryan Kohberger, who was a PhD student studying criminology at the neighboring Washington State University, accepted a plea deal. In exchange for pleading guilty to 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of burglary, he will spend the rest of his life in jail. But he has escaped the death penalty. Forensic psychiatrist Dr. Carol Lieberman joins Forbes True Crime to discuss new evidence about Kohberger and the horrific early hours of November 13, 2022, that has been made public since the judge lifted a sweeping gag order. Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a host here with Forbes TV. Joining me now is forensic psychiatrist Dr. Carol Lieberman. Dr. Lieberman, thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure.
I'm really interested in getting your perspective on a case that you've been covering since November of 2022. Since Bryan Kohberger ultimately pleaded guilty to the brutal murders of 4 University of Idaho students, Maddie Mogen, Kaylee Gonzalez, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin, he was then sentenced and the gag order is now lifted. We are finding out new information both about Bryan Kohberger and the crimes themselves. So to start off the conversation, as a forensic psychiatrist, what is sticking out to you?
Well, as you'll remember, the crime happened, the murders happened on November 13th, 2022. And people were starting to get antsy, annoyed with the police, the Moscow police, and the FBI for that matter, because they hadn't named a suspect yet, and time was going by. So I wanted to help them. And I could tell from the information that we had so far, at the very beginning, we were told, one, that it was some of the people who were the investigators said that this was the bloodiest crime scene that they had ever seen. And it was done by a knife. The murders were very personal with a knife, all 4 of them. And so what did that say? That told me that this was a person who was filled with rage, a very personal kind of rage. Then the next thing we learned was who the victims were. And we saw that there were these 4 college students, 3 women and a man, and they were the beautiful people. You know, they were beautiful, they were popular, they were, they were doing well in school, they had a very good life ahead of them. So I put those 2 things together and came up with the conclusion that the murderer must be an incel. An incel stands for someone who, a young man typically, who is involuntarily celibate. And meaning that these are men who have had a lot of trouble time and time again getting women to go out with them, to have sex with them, certainly to marry them. They just were rejected from time to time to time. And so then later on, when they did finally arrest Kohberger on the 30th, I was quoted in Newsweek on November 28th saying that the person was an incel, the killer. And then on November 30th, they arrested him, Kohberger. And then, as time went on, we learned some more things about him. And for me, the third piece of the puzzle was that when he seemed to fit the profile of an incel. And in particular, we learned that when he was in junior high school, he had a crush. His first love was this woman, a student, who was a blonde cheerleader, and who, if you put her picture next to Maddie and Kaylee, which some of the articles that quoted me did, you could see they looked like triplets. So this was, they brought back this rage, his first love, who rejected him. And not only did she reject him herself, she didn't do it in a kind way. She was very mean, and she told the other girls, oh, this guy's a creep and don't go out with him. And I mean, not that she really had to tell them. That's the thing about incels. Sometimes the problem is that they're not very attractive, but sometimes the problem is that in addition to that, or even without that, because they've been rejected so many times, they have a chip on their shoulder. They're angry. And when they go to ask the next girls out, um, they girls are like put off by them because they can feel, I'm not saying that they say to themselves, "Oh, this is an incel," although some of them probably pick up on that. But just they feel the rage of this person, and they're just put off by them. So he has been throughout his life. This has been what's been happening to him.
And Dr. Lieberman, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like women have that innate sense, if you will, to just know that someone's giving off those creep vibes, as you said, someone's giving off those weird vibes. You can't put your finger on it. Maybe you're not going to call them an incel, but there's reporting that's been done that that's what happened when Bryan Kohberger got to Washington. He was at a pool party, and a fleet of girls were turned off by him, thought he was being weird, being a creep. And I'm curious, he went to Washington University. He was getting his PhD in criminology. Do you think, based on what you've gathered from Bryan Kohberger about him, do you think he went there with the intent to kill or to learn how to uh, pull off this perfect crime? Or do you think, in your opinion, that something snapped inside him when he got to Washington and then he was filled with rage and then just killed?
Well, his rage was building since junior high school, at least. Um, so he may not have. I mean, when he moved to Washington, he was away from his family. So when people go to college, they generally feel more free to do things than they would have or than they did when they were at home with their parents, whether it's drugs or sex or or killing. um, there's that freedom. I can do whatever I want. I can express myself. And so I'm not sure that, on the way there he was thinking, I'm gonna, but but um, I think another part of this is that he was in all these forensic classes in junior college, and then um, in college, and now he was going to be getting his PhD in forensics, and I think that he had come to like Ted Bundy. He had come to feel, consciously or unconsciously, that he wanted to copy Ted Bundy. Now he didn't quite have the charm that Ted Bundy had, but Ted Bundy killed uh, college girls, and and Ted Bundy went to that school in Washington. So I think there was that part. Now, did he think it through and think, well, I'm following Ted Bundy, and I'm gonna kill girls here because he killed girls. You know, I'm not. He might have, certainly. I mean, he was smart. You got to give him that. Although he not smart enough to take take the perfect, what's the word I'm looking for? Not smart enough to make the perfect crime, to get away with the perfect crime, because that was partly what he was trying to do too. He was trying to be, he wanted to be, and I think he's going to get this. Besides, his rage at the women and so on, he also wanted a book to be written, or books to be written about him, and he wanted his fellow forensic students from the future to read about him. Just like he had to read all these books about these killers and so on, he wanted to be one of those books that future generations of students would have to read, and the general public too. That he would go down in history as being what I think he wanted to go down in history as someone who committed the perfect crime. But in any case, at least as a scary killer, big man.
And do you think, with that perspective, that if he got away with this, if he didn't leave the knife sheath, if there wasn't evidence connecting him to this crime, do you think he would have then killed again?
I think he probably would have. Um, if he would have gotten away with it, I think that would have boosted him, made him feel, oh, look, I can do it. But just to finish what I was saying before, his one of his teachers, a woman, Dr. Ramsland, she wrote a lot of books. She's very well known for writing books about killers. And he may well have fantasized about her writing a book about him. And indeed, she has said, she has admitted, told the media that she would like to write a book with him about him. I think in part, she's also said that she feels a little guilty, or she wonders what she could have done, why, like whether she could have or should have seen this in him, or whether she, you know, in some way got him to want to do this. So she has a lot of mixed feelings about it. But if she writes a book with him, that's going to be a bestseller. And even though I don't think he'd be able to get money from it, um, because in most states, criminals can't make money from their crimes, like from books and so on. But it wouldn't matter really because well, first of all, because women are sending him money, to put in his commissary to get things. Um, of course, now Luigi Mangione has taken some of that away from him. These women are more attracted to Mangione, but anyway, what he wanted he wanted to be famous. He wanted to have this renown for being this dangerous killer.
What do you make of that? I want to get to the seeking attention, the thirst for this attention in a bit, but what do you make of that? Him teaming up with someone perhaps to write a bestseller? I mean, do you think that could spur a copycat? Maybe people who are similar to Bryan Kohberger, who haven't committed a crime yet, might be thinking, that could give me the attention I so desperately crave. I mean,
Oh
what
yeah.
message is that sending?
Yes, sure. I mean, there are lots of books about various Ted Bundy. There's lots of movie about Bundy and all that. I mean, I guess that's also part of what he was hoping for, in idolizing Ted Bundy and copying him. But but yes, I mean, there are books about Son of Sam, for example. So yes, there is always the danger that people would read some of these or see a movie about them and then think, huh, that looks like fun, or I'll be famous if I do that. Yes, there is always that danger.
I would love if you could, as a psychiatrist, get into Bryan Kohberger's head just moments before the murder, because we saw new security footage that was released that shows his white Hyundai Elantra circling the King Road home a few times before ultimately pulling in, and then presumably the crimes take place, the murders take place, and then he speeds away a short while later. Does that mean anything to you in terms of where his head was at? Does that show that he was hesitant? Is it showing signs of hesitation? I mean, what conclusions are you drawing based on that security footage?
Some people had been saying that Kaylee wasn't supposed to be there that weekend because she had moved out already. But now it's come out that she hadn't completely moved out, that she had boxes packed, and she was there. I mean, so it wasn't a surprise really that she was there. And especially since he was stalking them and so on, um, and even their social media. I mean, he very well might have known that Kaylee was going to be there that weekend, and she was sleeping in the same room with Maddie.
And I think something that the whole country really wants to know is the why here, the motive behind just these heinous crimes. Even President Trump, after the plea agreement was announced, President Trump posts on social media that he was hoping the judge would get the motive out of Kohberger, and that never happened. Even during his sentencing, when the judge said, "Would you like to say anything?" Something to that effect, Kohberger stands up. He says, "I respectfully decline." What do
Right.
you make of that?
Yes, well, first of all, I think there was very little respect really behind that, but it was a good way to, I mean, if he wasn't going to say anything, which he wasn't because he was saving it for his book, and he didn't want to give them the satisfaction, he was being a little more continuing to be sadistic. Um, you know, First of all, on the one hand, yes, of course, everybody wanted to know. Of course, I'm sitting there thinking, hey guys, I told you what his motive was on November 28th. Why are you still asking? That was me. But it's the truth is that he could have said anything just to play with the heads of the victims' families, and that would have been worse. He could have made up any kind of story just to play with them, to be sadistic towards them, to um, you know, uh, for any kind of reason, just to send them down the wrong path. So I'm in the end, I think it was better that he did the same thing. But I watched that whole hearing, the victim's impact statements. I was glued to the computer, and it was very interesting. I don't know if you watched it.
I did. That was going to be my next question because you
Uh,
saw the families of these victims, Maddie Mogen's family, Xana Kernodle's family, Kayla Gonzalez's family, and all of these impact statements had a range, right? And I mean, they were
yes,
heartbreaking one after the other. Xana Kernodle's aunt said that she would forgive him. She wants to know information, any answers to questions she had. She would love to connect with him. Other people, they didn't forgive him, and it was a mix of emotional, saying what you did to these people. They had such bright futures, and it's disgusting too. I think a very powerful victim statement was Kayla Gonzalez's sister, Olivia. She
yes.
called him a psychopath, a sociopath, a loser, painfully average. I mean, the delivery was just incredible. It gave me chills when I watched it. Do you think that impacted him the most? Because it seems like he wanted to be the smartest person in the room, being called painfully average. I mean, what kind of impact do you think that had on him?
I think that she spent a lot of time putting her statement together and did a lot of research on him and realized that what would hurt would be to sort of show that you knew what he was about. And so some of those things where she said, you failed, like being a rapper, how how did you see the stars when you have visual snow? Because his alibi was supposedly he was driving around looking at the stars. Um, she's now, let's see. She said um, you're a textbook case of being like average. No one is scared of you. You thought you were God. You see some of those things, and then of course the thing that she said at the end. Um, well, it was interesting. I think she realized that this incel thing was behind it, um, because she said something at the end about how if you would have talked to Kaylee and Maddie, they would have been kind to you. Um, they would have they wouldn't have rejected you. They would have shown mercy. Um, and then, of course, the last thing that she said, which was paraphrasing, if you hadn't snuck into their room in the middle of the night in the dark like a pedophile, Kaylee would have effed you in the ass. And, that was, she ended on that and everybody clapped, of course. But the things some of the other things that she said and other people said too, like when people were calling him evil, that didn't hurt him. That didn't affect him. He liked being called evil. Or even when she said that he was a psychopath, he liked that. Um, and her mother was good when Kaylee's mother was good when Kaylee's mother said um, she got him with certain things that hurt too, like you attacked what you could never be. Um, you couldn't get a female to look at you. Uh, Men in prison will have their way with you. You'll finally get physical touch, just not how you wanted it. And then you may have gotten A. Yes, this is. You may have gotten A's in college, but you're going to be getting big D's in prison. So those remarks, were very got to him. Whenever somebody said something that got to him in one way or another, like made him angry or made him um, affected him, like when the aunt said that he could contact her. Of course the judge had said that he can't contact any of the family, so so he wouldn't be able to contact her. But anyhow, various things, different kinds of things that people said that affected him, he blinked. Otherwise, he had decided he wasn't going to show any emotion, and he had his mouth in this and his jaw in this fixed position, where like clenched at times, and and his arms were on the a chair, the arms of the chair, and they just stayed there. He was practically immobile through the whole thing. Now, what I thought was really interesting was there were two parents who said things that I think got to him in a psychopath really doesn't show any empathy or compassion, but I think he related to these two men who said that they were addicts. Do you remember? We had Ben Mogan. He was Maddie's biological father, and he and her mother had divorced, and so her stepfather spoke also. But Maddie's father was just um, so effective, so you had to feel sorry for him. I mean, you felt sorry for all of them, but he walked up there and he was very thin and his arms were shaking, and you could tell that he had just been destroyed by this. And he said, uh, let's see, that she was, um, Maddie was my only child. It was the only great thing I ever did, the only thing I was ever proud of. And then he talked about, being, um, I went through addiction, substance abuse, were times when I didn't want to live. And he talked about this time when his best memory of Maddie, which was when a certain musician was coming to town to do a concert, and it was one of her favorite, and it was all the tickets were sold out, but a radio station was doing some kind of a contest to give away tickets, and he somehow managed to get the tickets from that radio station, and he got four tickets, meet and greet tickets, and he went with Maddie, and she had friends also go, and it was like one of her happiest moments, and one of his happiest memories of her. And I get chills every time I tell that story. So I think that Bryan was able to sort of relate to him in the sense that Bryan had been addicted to heroin. And so I think that I think he did feel something, a twinge. um, I'll only give him a twinge worth. And then Xana, her father, talked about how he lived 7 minutes away from their house, and how he had thought of going over there, when Bryan was killing them. He didn't know that Bryan was killing them, of course. But he had spoken to Xana earlier in the day, and I think he thought she sounded down, and so he thought about going over there, like, to cheer her up. But he said Xana always told him never drink and drive, and he apparently had a problem with alcohol too, and he had been drinking that night. And of course, he feels incredibly guilty that he didn't go there, and that it was because he was drinking.
Based on anything that we saw, the new evidence or any of the old evidence over the past 3 years, do you think that something could have been a warning sign? Is there anything here in this case that you think we can learn from?
Well, yes. First of all, it's so hard to believe that. I mean, it's so hard to believe, but and unfortunate. I mean, his parents must have been like, how his family didn't see from the time he was growing up, because he had lots of problems. I mean, besides the girl, his first love, being a mean girl and rejecting him terribly, and starting him off on the path to being an incel. I mean, he was bullied by kids at school. He was an outcast. I mean, they saw that, at least they knew that, and he was addicted to heroin for a while, and so they knew he was having lots of problems. And he stole. They knew that he stole from his sister to get money for drugs. I mean, there were signs, and they missed all the signs. And his father took him to a boxing school, because he thought maybe that would help him to feel more self-confident or whatever. That's fine. I mean, but that wasn't enough. I mean, that was an okay thing to do, and I think it helped to some degree. But um, but uh, why didn't they take him to a psychiatrist? I mean, surely they should have seen that he needed mental health help. And his sisters, who both became um, mental therapists, social workers, or therapists of some type, not psychologists or psychiatrists, but they were going to school to be therapists. And now he was a little older. They were older than he was, but even in their early years, or even in their interest of being therapists, they could have seen some of these warning signs and tried to get their parents to take him to get help. So that is just so parents. I mean, so what can we learn? Parents need to be very, very um, observant, and not to just let things, if they feel that something is wrong with their child. I mean, a lot of teenagers don't necessarily tell their kids, or teenagers don't necessarily come out and tell their parents, I'm feeling depressed, or I'm feeling really angry. Or some do, but some of them you have to sort of figure it out. And clearly, from some of the things that he was writing online when he was a teenager, like about the visual snow, and about how he is suicidal, and how he hates his parents, and wherever he looks in his parents' eyes, and he sees nothing, or it's cold, or something like that. I mean, you have to be looking for these things. Look, not expecting your child to be a serial killer, but looking for things that problems that your child is having. I mean, for example, if your child is, I mean, yes, he did go to rehab for his heroin addiction. Um, one would hope that there was some therapy there, not just um, making sure he didn't take any drugs, but it isn't this same kind of therapy as when you go to a private therapist and you go for years. That is the kind of therapy that he needed starting when he was a little boy, before he got addicted to heroin. That was just the symptom, getting addicted to heroin. But obviously he was depressed. He was having problems before that. And they should have taken him. And parents need to, like, if your child is, well, first of all, if you know that your child is being bullied, or your child is being isolated at school, or if they stay in their room a lot, or they don't seem to have friends, all of these kinds of examples, or they seem depressed, or they seem anxious, or they have nightmares, or there are all these psychological symptoms that parents need to be observant of, and and to take their child to get evaluated. If the parent isn't sure if this is anything significant, fine. Take your child to a psychiatrist or a psychologist and have them be evaluated. And they can tell you what's going on. But most of the problems that people have in their adult years, or even young adult years, could have been stopped if they had gotten help when they were younger. And sort of an aside from that, not just the parents have the primary responsibility, but teachers. Teachers, even in elementary school, teachers know, really, most of them, which kids are having problems, even if the kids don't tell them that they're having problems. Like, if it's the kids who are sitting alone at lunch, the kids who other kids are teasing, the kids who don't do their homework, and you ask them why, and they tell you about something about their parents, that they were at home, or they something. Um, so really, things could be stopped, and should be stopped, before junior high school.
I know that you think that his rage was spurred from this crush that rejected him in middle school, but I think part of the human experience, right, is having an unrequited love. Someone doesn't like you back. I mean, most people have experienced being rejected by a crush, especially in younger years, but most of us don't go on killing sprees. So what happened there? I mean, what do you think is the gap there, that 99% of people have crushes, maybe they don't like them back, they're not killing a bunch of people 20 years later?
That's true. And so it has to do with how resilient that person is at that time, let's say by junior high school, when Kohberger got that rejection. If you have a loving family who can, and you feel comfortable, especially if you feel comfortable telling your family or telling, maybe not your parents, but if you have sisters or brothers, telling someone in your family. I just had, look, this girl just rejected me. I wrote her this love letter. I told her I loved her, and, she just laughed at me. Um, People can, if you can, families can give a child that warmth or that, tell them about, oh, I know this hurts, but you'll meet somebody, or why don't we, why do you think that she didn't like you back? What could we do? What could you do? What do you think you could have done to make the next girl like you? He was fat, so maybe they could suggest going on a diet, um, uh, or he not being so needy, like not showing the girl that you're so needy. Like I think he wrote this really sort of he professed his love in this. I mean, that's that's always a bad thing, not just for Bryan Kohberger, but when a guy or a girl for that matter puts their love out. 99% of the time, that kind of turns the person off because they seem so needy. Um, so you can have these discussions, and and if they're really depressed, you can again take them for help, get them help. And I don't mean just medication, I mean therapy, talk therapy.
Dr. Lieberman, my last question for you then is, I know that you believe Bryan Kohberger will speak again. He craves this attention. He wants to drip, drip, drip this out. That's what Steve Gonsalves, Kaylee Gonsalves' father, thinks, that he's going to just dangle this motive and other information out and just try to get as much attention as possible. Do you think it's incumbent then on the public and really the media too to not give him this attention he just so desperately wants?
Well, I mean, he's in prison now. The only attention that he's going to get, I mean, I don't know. There might be some media going and trying to get interviews. I'm not sure if it's allowed or when it would be allowed in the prison that he's in. Um, but and then of course the book that he writes, that it's not going to be over. I don't know how quickly he's going to be able to write a book and get a book published and all of that. But um, so I'm not sure how much he's going to know that the public still wants to know. I mean, he'll know if there's a book and there are tons of books that it becomes a bestseller, goes to the top of the New York Times bestseller list. Probably would, you know. Um, but in the meantime, he will still get letters from women because that's a thing. Women like bad boys, and I mean that was my first book, Bad Boys: Why We Love Them, How to Live with Them, and When to Leave Them. And I talk about 12 different types, and the worst type or the most dangerous type is the are the guys who are in jail and the women who are their groupies. So he will still be getting attention from enough women, even though, as I said before, Mangione is taking some of his attention away. But there will still be women who keep writing to him.
I mean, what do you make of that? What do you make of that trend? Because you're seeing that with Luigi Mangione too, him getting positive attention. In some instances, you're saying this is happening with Bryan Kohberger as well. What do you make of that?
Well, it's because, well, first of all, the reason why women like bad boys, all 12 types, is because of their relationship with their father, which they made them feel unlovable. And it's in 12 different ways that the relationship, the dysfunctional relationship with the father can be in 12 different ways. And it unconsciously sets the girl on a path to find a certain type, a certain one of these profiles. And so for men who are in prison, some of the women who go after them, well, first of all, they've had a cruel, when they were children, they had a cruel childhood. But also, sometimes if they've been hurt by other guys, they like, or like if they've been cheated on by other guys, they like a man to be in prison because they feel that this man, that he's not going to cheat with other women. he's in prison. Hey, he can't go date them or have sex with them. So the woman feels as though, especially if he writes her back and he expresses things that make her feel like he really loves her back. And so they are women who don't have much hope that they're going to find a man in real life outside of prison who loves them. And I have this sort of interesting, funny story. I mean, it wasn't, I don't know how funny it was, but one of the times when I was on Sally Jesse Raphael, her talk show, the topic was women who love men who are in prison, and particularly killers who are in prison. And she had different women who loved different serial killers. And one of them was, what was his name? A killer in California who who had killed a series of women, raped and killed a series of women. Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker. And there were two women who thought they were going to be marrying Richard Ramirez. They each thought they were engaged to him, that they were the only woman in his life, who was going to marry him. And they met on the stage of her show. And they started having this physical fight. They were, trying to destroy each other. They couldn't believe that he would be two-timing them, writing letters and telling another woman that he's going to marry them. And I had to explain to them that here this man is, he's raped a bunch of women, he's killed a bunch of women, and you think that he wouldn't two-time you? That would be something that he wouldn't do? Of course, they didn't really want to hear that, but still, it was, that just showed, it was a very amazing example, a powerful example of how, of the thinking of these kinds of women, where that thought never even enters their mind that there could be another woman.
And I know I said that was my last question, but what you just said spurred one more question in me. Bryan Kohberger is a convicted killer. He was saying he was innocent till he wasn't, till he pled guilty. Do you think that he has the capability the next time we do end up hearing from him to even tell the truth? Judge Hippler said that how do we even know he's going to tell the truth once he speaks again? I mean, what do you think?
Right. It's true. I mean, the only thing would be, I mean, I guess it could work both ways, but if he does do a book with his teacher, his former teacher, on the one hand, I think they had a good relationship. So on the one hand, I would think that he would be inclined to tell her the truth. On the other hand, since they had this relationship and for years, he might be too embarrassed to say some of the things that were part of it. Maybe he wouldn't want to, or maybe he wouldn't want to tell the world that I don't know that he'd want to admit that he was an incel, for example, or that this girl in junior high school hurt him so much, because that would be giving her satisfaction.
Dr. Lieberman, I appreciate the conversation today. I appreciate your insight here. Thank you so much for joining me. You're welcome back anytime.
You're very welcome. Thank you.